CBS News. Take care.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. The gavel fell today to end the Supreme Court term, and it came down hard on President Reagan and several former aides. On one of the biggest days in recent Supreme Court history, the justices upheld the constitutionality of independent counsels who investigate and prosecute high-ranking government officials. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver reports on this decision and its impact.
The decision was a major defeat for President Reagan and some of his former top officials. It upholds the convictions of former White House aides Michael Deaver and Lynn Nofziger, allows the prosecution of former National Security Council aides Oliver North and John Poindexter, and the continued investigation of former Assistant Attorney General Theodore Olson, who brought and lost today's case.
The decision of the Supreme Court today in the independent counsel case is a slam dunk decision.
The court was asked to strike down the law on the grounds that it violated the Constitution's separation of powers. It requires federal judges rather than members of the executive branch to appoint independent counsels. But by an overwhelming majority, the court, led by Chief Justice William Rehnquist, disagreed because an independent counsel can be named only at the request of the Attorney General, and the Attorney General can remove an independent counsel who is operating outside the law. The administration tried to put the best face on its loss.
Well, these are all tough constitutional issues, and we put up, on behalf of the administration, the best legal arguments that we can.
In fact, only one justice, Antonin Scalia, sided with Meese in an unusual action, passionately charging from the bench that the court majority was violating a quintessential executive branch power. But former Watergate prosecutor Archibald Cox, whose firing by President Richard Nixon triggered passage of the law, hailed the decision.
Without such a law as this, there is no assurance of investigation and prosecution free from personal or political interest of the president.
Both sides had called this one of the most important constitutional battles of modern times. Now the Supreme Court has clearly stated that in some very special cases, Congress can pass laws that, in Justice Rehnquist's words, reduce the amount of control the president has over criminal prosecutions. Rita Braver, CBS News at the Supreme Court.
In another major ruling, the Supreme Court struck down the death sentence imposed on a teenage murderer, saying the death penalty for children offends, and I quote, civilized standards of decency. Bruce Morton has our report.
William Wayne Thompson was 15 years old when he and 3 older friends murdered his sister's ex-husband by slashing him, beating him, shooting him, cutting his throat, and throwing his body into a river. The courts of Oklahoma sentenced him to death. Today, the Supreme Court said imposing the death penalty on a 15-year-old was unconstitutional, cruel, and unusual punishment. But it was a very narrow decision.
The Supreme Court of the United States today only said that juveniles under 16 at the time of the commission of the crime may not be sentenced to death for it.
And only a plurality, not a majority, of the court said even that. 3 justices agreed with Justice Stevens that executing 15-year-olds is unconstitutional. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor concurred, but on narrower grounds, this case only, no general finding.
We recommended drawing a bright line at 18. They did not do that.
It is a very small step in the right direction.
The decision is good news for Thompson, but only a handful of death row inmates committed their crimes when under 16. The ruling won't affect 16 and 17-year-olds, a larger group. In another major ruling today, the court overturned the conviction of John Coy, found guilty in an Iowa court of sexually molesting 2 13-year-old girls. At his trial, Coy was separated from the girls, who were witnesses against him, by a one-way screen. He could see them, the jury could see everyone, but the girls couldn't see Coy out of worry that seeing him might frighten them. But the court ruled 6-2 that violated Coy's constitutional right to confront the witnesses against him. Justice Scalia wrote, that face-to-face presence may, unfortunately, upset the abused child, but by the same token it may confound the false accuser or reveal the child coached by a malevolent adult.
It's the first time the United States Supreme Court has come out and actually said that directly that a criminal defendant has a right to have his accuser face him face-to-face and confront him with testimony against him.
This decision could also turn courts against other forms of not-in-person testimony, such as putting a witness on videotape. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
Several other key court decisions today, these were among them. Taxpayer money may be used to pay religious groups for counseling teenagers against premarital sex. No violation of church-state separation, said the court. State regulations on professional fundraisers violate their right to free speech. In a defeat for organized labor, the court said private sector unions may not use dues collected from non-members for any political lobbying. And a major civil rights decision, the justices ruled unanimously that employers may be sued over subjective promotion decisions that tend to favor white workers over minorities. The Supreme Court is adjourned now until the first Monday in October. The House Armed Services Committee opened an investigation today of the huge corruption scandal that has rocked the Defense Department. As David Martin reports, a top Pentagon official was in the hot seat to answer what went wrong.
What, in your view, if you as you see this and somebody asks you, why would it be happening now, what would you say?
One word: greed. The contracts are bigger. There are fewer of them. People are going to do anything, perhaps, in this case, to get that contract.
The Defense Department's chief buyer was the lead-off witness in the first day of congressional hearings triggered by the Pentagon bribery scandal. It was a primer in what is wrong with the way the Pentagon purchases its weapons. Mountains of rules and regulations, these are just the Army's, that are complex but not tough enough on contractors. Consultants who are supposed to provide expert advice on high-tech weapons but are really salesmen.
I think we have people that are influence peddlers. And those are the people that you and I both need to absolutely control.
Powerful defense contractors who work their will on Congress. A new report from Common Cause says members of the Senate and House Armed Services Committees took in more than $500,000 in speaking fees from top defense contractors last year.
The way the contractors have become ingrained in the entire system threatens our ability to pass legislation that is meaningful.
The most immediate problem is what to do about weapons contracts that may have been tainted by bribery.
As soon as we get the information on every contract, every single one will be examined.
We're looking at a potential serious gridlock on national security issues over this issue of what do you do with the tainted contracts.
If contracts have to be renegotiated, that could indeed cause major delays. Then the so-called sleaze factor, which has bedeviled the Reagan administration, would turn into something much worse than just embarrassment. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Governor Michael Dukakis has just 3 weeks now to decide who his vice presidential running mate is to be. Friends and supporters of the Reverend Jesse Jackson have been quietly, respectfully, but forcefully emphasizing their belief that Jackson has earned serious first consideration. Today, Bill Whitaker reports, Dukakis was listening to many opinions in Washington.
Michael Dukakis brought his search for a running mate directly to Capitol Hill today. He continued to play it close to the vest, refusing to reveal much about his likely choice.
I can't say at this point that I'm either close or not so close. These things have a way of sorting themselves out. We're making good progress. I'll be talking with other possible vice presidential candidates who I want to talk with.
During his day on the Hill, Dukakis met privately with 4 senators said to be on his VP list. John Glenn of Ohio, who was reported to be at the top of that list, Bob Graham of Florida, Texas Senator Lloyd Benson, and Sam Nunn from Georgia. Nunn said he told Dukakis face-to-face he's not interested in the number 2 slot.
I like what I'm doing now. I enjoy representing the people of Georgia. I also enjoy being in the Senate, and I enjoy being chairman of the Armed Services Committee.
Dukakis met with some 30 Democratic senators in 2 group meetings today. They discussed everything from election year politics to the drought. They also discussed the vice presidency, of course, but like Dukakis, Senate Democrats were closed-mouthed.
You know, he's trying to sort it out. He's trying to get a good sense of it. I think he's touching a lot of bases, and that's exactly what he ought to do.
The Dukakis campaign reportedly has sent questionnaires to at least 8 senators and congressmen asking for detailed financial and tax information, for school, military, and driving records, and for health records. The campaign hopes to avoid the embarrassment George McGovern faced over Thomas Eagleton's psychological problems, or Mondale with Geraldine Ferraro's family finances. But over the day hung the name of Jesse Jackson. Some prominent Washington Democrats say he's out of the VP race. Jackson supporters insist he's still in. Dukakis leaves here for a campaign swing through the Midwest. With him in Ohio will be Senator John Glenn. Campaign staffers say Dukakis hopes to have a decision on a running mate wrapped up within 2 weeks. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Washington.
IBM, the computer giant, today announced it expects as many as 4,000 workers to retire or leave the company as it phases out some manufacturing operations in 4 states and a Canadian province. IBM emphasized no one will be laid off in the plan to, quote, reduce costs and provide for growth. But painful outright layoffs and budget cuts were announced today by a federal utility whose storied past is shadowed by its troubled present. Bruce Hall reports.
TVA, the nation's largest supplier of electricity, accused of mismanagement and in deep financial trouble, took drastic action today. 7,500 people were laid off, $300 million cut from its budget, and construction of 2 nuclear power plants postponed.
These actions are absolutely necessary for the survival of TVA, for the long-term economic vitality of our region.
TVA was started 55 years ago to build dams, provide cheap electricity, and bring prosperity to the poverty-stricken Mid-South. It was the essence of Roosevelt's New Deal idealism. But in recent years, TVA has come under increasing criticism.
TVA is a monster without a master. That's the basic problem. TVA is accountable to no one. It's an independent agency which answers to no one.
Rates for TVA electricity are nearly 25% higher than some competitors. Billions have been lost on an ambitious but mismanaged nuclear program. And the agency has been plagued with allegations of faulty construction, safety violations, and employee harassment.
We are starting a new way of doing business, and we had to make some very tough, hard decisions.
And those hard decisions were felt this afternoon as employees began receiving their layoff notices.
It's just the same as having a funeral. We are so sad here. We're just devastated here because this is our jobs and this is our livelihood.
Job banks have been set up, but the layoffs are a major blow to the area that once looked to TVA as its economic savior. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Atlanta.
The government today reported that its broadest measure of future economic activity dropped in May for the first time since January. But some economists said that the 0.1% decrease is not a sign of any trouble ahead. Instead, they insist the dip is consistent with other recent statistics indicating the economy is slowing down after getting off to a robust start this year. Still to come on the CBS Evening News, Barry Peterson on the Communist Party conference and whether a fox has been appointed to guard the chicken coop. And Bob McNamara on the big difference a little rain can make, but in the marketplace, not in the fields.
Many financial opportunities offer protection, yet one stands out because it also offers potential for growth. The Traveler's Universal Life. Life insurance protection and tax-deferred growth opportunity. So you'll have a special kind of nest egg to secure the financial future of your family or business. Get the Traveler's Universal Life and watch your opportunities grow. The Travelers, you're better off under the umbrella.
Let me give you another reason why a small business person want to work with AT&T. Now, if you're a big Fortune 500 company, you probably got the opportunity to have a big staff. You hire your own experts. But if you're a small businessman, you can't afford to hire your own communication experts. Where do you go to get those people who can help you build a network to serve your customers the way one of the biggest companies in America goes? You have very limited choices. You want to get highly skilled, knowledgeable people who can help you apply that technology to your business. That's what AT&T brings.
Raisin Nut Bran tastes better than Kellogg's, better than Post. It's got juicy nut-covered raisins and big, crisp flakes.
People have a better time around Raisin Nut Bran.
The best tasting Raisin Bran.
Captain, this itchy rash is driving me crazy.
Why didn't you use the Cord-Aid?
Cord-Aid goes beneath the skin to actually heal itches and rashes.
You know, itches and rashes won't last if you use Cord-Aid first.
A federal judge ruled today that the Reagan administration cannot legally shut down the PLO observer mission to the United Nations. The judge said the anti-terrorism law signed by President Reagan last year does not supersede the original 1947 U.S. agreement with the UN. The Justice Department used the new law as grounds to file suit in March to close the PLO mission. About 75 teenage Palestinian girls were demonstrating peacefully in the parking lot of the U.S. consulate in East Jerusalem today when they were tear-gassed by Israeli police. U.S. officials say they had explicitly asked the police not to use tear gas. No other way to say it, an incredible scene today in Moscow at Mikhail Gorbachev's Communist Party conference. With Gorbachev looking on, delegates openly argued such issues as the pace of reform and restructuring and limiting terms for Communist Party leaders. There was also an unmistakable sign that hardliners are at least holding their own, as Barry Peterson tells us.
Yegor Ligachev, the number 2 man in the Politburo, and the man most observers say is trying to slow Gorbachev's plans to change the Soviet system. Gorbachev's main target, the entrenched bureaucracy. But the party conference named Ligachev as chairman of the so-called commission struggling against bureaucracy. Some say it's the fox called in to guard the hens. In an extremely rare interview, he told a Soviet reporter that the committee will not be moving all that fast.
We have to take into account all the situations as we try to work out the main principles.
The bureaucracy is being blamed for almost everyone's ills, including not enough rubles in the paycheck.
In America, a scientist makes $100,000. Here, a scientist makes only $8,000. It's all because of centralization.
At issue as well today, the growing push for democracy in a nation many still consider a police state. There was a fresh example of how that isn't happening for one man, Sergei Petrov, a photographer who was tried for 7 years to get permission to live and work outside his country.
I'm not a dissident. I don't want to change anything in the Soviet Union. I just want to leave.
He sat with Mrs. Reagan when the president hosted a meeting during the summit with prominent outcasts. He heard Gorbachev's words about democracy at the party conference, and today, authorities told him again he is still not free to leave.
Frankly, what frustrates me is the discrepancies between what is happening to me and the other people and what is said.
It's not just the party conference debating a nation's agenda, but something rarely seen here. Ordinary people taking to the streets to talk and argue. It's an indication they are taking seriously the words of their leader, that all Soviet citizens should have a stake in how the future is shaped. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
A tragic, costly day for the U.S. Air Force in West Germany. 1 pilot and 3 F-16 warplanes with a replacement cost of $40 million were lost. 2 of the fighters collided in midair. 1 of the pilots was killed, the other ejected safely. Wreckage fell near a populated area. An air-to-air missile was found lodged in the middle of a road. Earlier, 90 miles away, another American F-16 crashed into the Black Forest. The pilot was able to eject.
Suddenly Salad proposes 3 exciting new leisure activities. Pasta primavera with broccoli.
Love those brand new pasta salad flavors.
Ranch and bacon.
Leisure activities I can savor.
And Caesar with croutons.
Suddenly salad.
With tasty extras like real bacon, Parmesan cheese, and crunchy croutons. 3 delicious new leisure activities.
Suddenly salad.
Live high.
11 noisy 4-year-olds. An absent assistant. And Susan Macy is left with a headache that's going from bad to worse. That's why her next move is to Metaprin. Metaprin has the same medicine as Motrin, and nothing's proven faster for relief of headache pain or any kind of pain. It's also gentler to your stomach than aspirin. Metaprin works fast when you haven't got time for the pain.
When your coffee's rich enough for all working day long, and it tastes your way.
It's necessarily Nescafe. Great coffee blends to change the way. That's necessarily Nescafe.
Secretary of State George Shultz flew to Guatemala tonight to start a brief whirlwind 4-country tour of Central America. Tomorrow, El Salvador, where U.S. hopes for political and economic reform have been hurt recently. State Department correspondent Wyatt Andrews is there.
The El Salvador Secretary Schultz will see is a nation still geared for war despite the billions the U.S. has spent to end it. He will see deepening poverty despite the additional billions spent in U.S. economic aid.
We don't even earn the money to feed our children.
And Schultz will find a worsening atmosphere of violence and political terror. The death squads in El Salvador are back.
The common denominator is fear in the country, and so we don't see that real democracy is still in the country.
El Salvador was supposed to be the Reagan administration's shining success in Latin America. There were elections, a popular president. Democracy, peace, and prosperity would come next. But in reality, President Jose Duarte could make none of those dreams happen. El Salvador's problem is still the war the military says it is winning, but clearly isn't. Salvadoran rebels with help from Nicaragua are still powerful enough to stage dramatic attacks. The man who says he can end the anarchy is Alfredo Cristiani, the leading candidate for president. The man who inherited the right-wing Arena party from Roberto d'Aubuisson, the reputed chief of the death squad. Like d'Aubuisson, Cristiani is critical of U.S. human rights concerns, saying the U.S. has hurt the Army's ability to fight an all-out war.
They are not doing their job in keeping law and order. And in fact, we feel that part of it comes from the restraints because of the U.S. policy.
Cristiani denies it, but almost everyone sees a direct connection between the resurgence of the right wing and escalating political violence.
Disappearance of persons continue. Torture at the police hands continue all the time.
Amidst all that failure and into all this poverty, the U.S. still pumps around $400 million a year into El Salvador, an amount that almost equals the national budget here. That kind of money makes Secretary Schultz's visit here just like that of a nervous investor, the head office man coming to ask when the company will finally turn a profit and wondering what's gone wrong with the product. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, San Salvador.
You may remember our recent story of a 9-year-old deaf-mute boy found wandering the streets of Juarez, Mexico last year. No one could determine his identity or home. Last night, mystery solved. The boy was reunited with his mother, who had seen his picture in newspapers and on television. She works as a maid in Tampico, 1,000 miles away. She said her son ran away. She said that she'd put him up for adoption if he could attend a school for the deaf.
At Citicorp, we believe it takes people with vision to help people with dreams. So many of our people come from fields beyond banking. Untypical bankers, untypical thinking has made us America's largest financial services company. As Citicorp and Citibank, we're already helping 1 in 5 American families. We'd like you to get to know us better. Citicorp, because Americans want to succeed, not just survive.
There's more to it than meets the eye. That crunch of wheat holds a sweet surprise. Raisin in the middle, Kellogg's Raisin Squares. It's one of life's sweet surprises that wholesome wheat turns sweet inside. Raisin in the middle, Kellogg's Raisin Squares. There's more to it than meets the eye. Kellogg's Raisin Squares and Apple Cinnamon Squares.
Peerless do-it-yourself faucets come with stainless steel construction and a 15-year warranty. Peerless is also the only faucet that comes with this feature, a free 12-month subscription to Home Mechanics magazine. Offer good through July 31st.
Into the land of heartburn comes the first liquid antacid without that liquid antacid taste. A really good tasting liquid that puts out heartburn's fire. New Tums liquid. It works. It really tastes good.
A government agent in Wisconsin called it a $100 million rain. He was referring to storms that dampened some parts of the dry as dust Midwest. But today, forecasters predicted that at a minimum, the Midwestern drought will only worsen in July. Bob McNamara reports.
It was a nice, steady shower that fell today on Everett and Herb Kiesling's Indiana corn and soybean fields. But the 0.2 of an inch was barely enough to wash the dust off the bean leaves, and an old Hoosier was not impressed.
Well, it would take this kind of rain to about 4 or 5 days to do any good. That is any permanent good, I mean.
The rain began falling on parts of the drought belt late yesterday. It soaked the corn near Green Bay, Wisconsin, but farmer Mark Olson wasn't dancing in his fields.
Not quite yet, but as long as it's raining, I guess we can rejoice a little bit because it's not getting any drier.
If the rain's impact was felt anywhere the most today, it was on the floor of Chicago's Board of Trade. Here, reacting to the rain, prices for July commodity futures closed down across the board. Soybeans fell 83 cents from yesterday, oats and corn down 28 cents a bushel, wheat down almost 20 cents.
When the rain came overnight, they all wanted to get out at the same time because rain makes grain.
It was a trading day that wasn't like most others.
On a scale of 1 to 10, this is about an 8.5.
The rain was welcome back to Kansas City last night, where 27,000 fans cheered a light downpour. And while in Omaha, a storm put on a spectacular light show, the worst drought since the Dust Bowl days of the Depression continues, and forecasters say the 30-day outlook is not encouraging.
No, this is not a drought-breaking type forecast. The changes, in as much as we can see them, are rather slow.
Like other parched places, Grand Rapids, Michigan today sought divine intervention from the drought.
Grant to our parched soil a sufficiency of rain, so that our fields may flourish to harvest.
In Minnesota last night, the prayers were answered. This morning, there was water standing in fields that for weeks had been broiled dry. But the rains weren't enough to soak brush and pasture land north of Minneapolis. And late today, fire crews on the ground and in the air worked desperately to douse a wildfire that was threatening to spread to nearby homes. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Chicago.
And with the hope for some big rain soon in the Midwest and South, that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather, see you tomorrow. Good night.
Up to $2,000 cash back from Subaru is worth more than the same money from anyone else.
It's worth more because Subaru builds a rugged, reliable wagon that's the best-selling import wagon in America.
It's worth more because Subaru's XT6 has the same engine design found in a Ferrari or a Porsche.
It's worth more because the Subaru Justy is the lowest-priced four-wheel drive passenger car in America.
Up to $2,000 cash back on a Subaru is worth more because it's on a Subaru.
With low back pain, walking can be agony, where every step shoots pain. Up here, you know what helps? New back guard.
Clinically proven back guard is a shoe insert for low back pain aggravated by foot shock. Back guard with its shock trapper module relieves this low back pain. Watch how it helps absorb shock upon impact to reduce the shock to your back.
Amazing. Something down here can help up here.
New back guard from Dr. Scholl's. Absorb shock all day to help keep back pain away.
Folks, for dentures that feel fresh as a morning breeze, try my Mint Fresh Polident. It's got a minty mouthwash ingredient, so it freshens up dentures as it cleans tough stains. Try Super Strength Polident Green, the mouth freshening clean. Ah.
Do you get more than you want from your high-fiber cereal, like sodium and added sugar? Get Fiber One. It has more fiber and it's low in sodium and has no added sugar. Get more of the fiber your body needs and less of the stuff it doesn't. Fiber One.
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, Peter Bogdanovich on Jimmy Cagney Movies, now available on video cassette.
Also, Hall & Oates tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
Coming up on Eyewitness News tonight, the search continues for the killers of a Sumner County detective and his informant. We'll have the latest. Cattle are dying in Crofton, Kentucky, and farmers blame the phosphorus leak from last week's train derailment. Plus, the layoff notices go out at the TVA. We'll have those stories and more coming up in just a moment.
There you are. Hey, how you been?
All right, all right.
I didn't see your car out front.
Oh, I got a new car.
Yeah? What did you get?
A Tracer.
A Mercury?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to get another, what do you call it?